Hello world, this is here from Prague. So again, it's revelation times and I'm revealing things that we think we know that ain't so. In my previous videos, I already revealed what is a woman and what is gender. I highly advise you to watch them. And now it's mother's turn. It is time to reveal what exactly is motherhood. Motherhood is the most important and indispensable part of our lives. Mother love gives the child emotional strength, emotional regulation, and empathy. It helps with social skills and cognitive development. These strengths the child will later use to socialize, make friends, and face life. Nowadays, motherhood period lasts for some 20 years. It follows the mother instinct. During our history, women used to have 7, 8, 10 children in the span of some 20 years. So roughly every 2 years, women used to give birth to another child. Most of us in the modern societies, we lived with our mothers for at least 18 years. So, motherhood is a 18-20 year period. But this is built around the mother's perspective. Okay, and what about the children? What is motherhood for a child? And here comes the big surprise. Motherhood as the most important phase in our lives ends at around the age of 2-3 years. Yes, you heard correctly. Motherhood for the child ends and the phase called separation and individuation starts. Let me stress on this point. A child must start separating from the mother in order to properly individuate. Furthermore, psychologists call this the second birth. Yes, we are born twice. First is the physical separation with the cutting of the umbilical cord, and the second is a psychological birth. So the ego, the person can start individuating. Why do we have to be born twice? Because feelings is the short answer, or in psychological terms, a symbiotic existence. In our first years, we are symbiotes with our mothers, or in other words, a unity of two. So we have to break or we have to separate from this unity, this state of existence in order to become individuals. Failure to separate from the mother results in a lack of clear boundaries between the child and the mother. This leads to a pathological symbiosis where both view each other as extensions of themselves rather than distinct individuals. The individual remains psychologically stuck at an early developmental stage, typically around the age of 2. This is prior to the separation and individuation phase. In adulthood, this manifests as an inability to form healthy relationships, difficulty with emotional regulation, low self-esteem, and challenges in asserting personal autonomy. Now, let's look at our history. Women again used to have 7, 8, 10 children. So the mother has her first child and she gives him or her all her love and care. 2 years later, the second pops up, and because mothers are superheroes, she manages them both. 2 more years go by and a third child is born. What happens at this point? At this point, the mother needs all the peace and quiet for the second and third children. So naturally, the first child goes out and starts socializing and playing with his or her peers. So in a way, the second and third children naturally push the first one out of the tent or the hut or wherever we lived during our history. This also starts the socialization phase. And this is a really, really effective separation from the mother. At the age of 7, if a girl, she would go back and start helping the mother with her younger siblings. She started taking responsibilities and learning how to be a mother. And she became a woman. If the 7-year-old was a boy, he would start working with his father. and he would take an apprenticeship with another man. So at this age, he also started taking responsibilities and he also became a man. Historically, both manhood and womanhood started at around the ages of 7, 8. So, at the age of 7, the young man, not the boy, the man was mostly involved with other men and had a male role model. And he had little to no involvement with his mother. At this stage, a 7-year-old man already had 3 younger siblings, and the mother, on her side, would have no time and desire to deal with him. So, in other words, everything was attuned for him to individuate and develop as a man. First, the younger siblings pushed him into manhood, and second, there was always need for more men. It may sound cynical, but mothers were like conveyor belts. Every following child pushed the first ones into individuation. And in this way, mothers always had their 20 years of motherhood. On the other hand, most children had their 3-4 years of mother care, followed by an effective separation and individuation. This was life since the beginning of time until some 100 years ago, when women started having significantly less children. And also when the modern society started shaping in what it is today. And what is it today? Nowadays, in many Western and modern societies, it has been normalized for a mother to work. In America, this can be as early as 2 weeks after birth. Motherhood again is the most important phase in our lives. If not properly done, consequences are lifelong and can be devastating. As you can imagine, negatively affected are the emotional regulation and empathy, social skills and cognitive development. Does it sound familiar? It should. In other words, a working mother is more or less a disaster for the baby or the young child. In psychology, intentionally depriving your child of nutrition or care constitutes child neglect, and this in turn constitutes child abuse. In other words, millions of children in the West are being abused from as early as 2 weeks after birth. Or to be more precise, millions of babies are being abused from that early age. Think about it. At the age of 3, the child must start separating. Instead, today we have more and more mother involvement, especially with single mothers. Remember, motherhood for the mother is a 20-year period. So mothers continue doing the most natural thing, to mother their children. And no one realizes that mothers have little to no experience in handling a 5-6-year-old boy or 8-9-year-old man. Yes, modern societies and mothers mostly ignore child's and especially boys' needs. Again, motherhood is effectively a 3-4 year project, not 18-20. Okay? All this heavily distorts the child's separation and individuation. Both boys and girls are affected, but mostly boys, because essentially the boys have to be separated by the age of 7 and they should be surrounded by men. Failure to successfully separate and individuate poses significant psychological risks, impacting identity, emotional regulation, and relationships. And this often results in borderline and narcissistic personality disorders, and increased feelings of anxiety and depression. Does it sound familiar? It should. This perfectly describes today's situation with younger generations and especially men. Again, this is psychology, not me. Look it up. Biggest distortion we have is with boys and young men. During their entire growth, they're mostly surrounded by the mother and other females, while the natural thing is to separate from the mother from early age and be surrounded by men. So, Rise in various personality disorders in younger generations, and especially men, can be attributed and traced back to ineffective separation and individuation from the mother. So, yep, that's it. I hope I gave you enough food for thought and you start to realize the root cause of most modern social issues. Thank you all and God bless.